Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 359. Well, the fallout from the internal Department of Justice report that was provided to the survivors last Thursday continues to bloom. Attorneys for Courtney Wild, Paul Cassell, and Brad Edwards are not too happy about a lot of the occurrences that took place within that report, especially the missing data and the missing information. And now, well, they're looking to get that information from the Department of Justice, and they're looking to make sure that this information finds its way to the 11th Circuit Court, which I am pretty sure it's going to at this point. Now, I bet the government won't be too happy about it, right? The government will try and block it in their draconian way, but I think that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals needs to have all of this information. If they've decided to meet and they've decided to take this case as a whole, then I think that it would be a good idea for all of the information to be available to them. And I know if I was one of those justices, I'd be pissed. I'd be calling the government in front of me and giving them the business, because there's no way in hell this stuff should have been kept private. There's no way the government should be in a cover its ass mode right now, and it should be all about transparency. And I know there's people thinking that we're going to head towards that course or something, but folks, we are not going to have any transparency from the Department of Justice, no matter who the president is. That's how these people operate. They believe they're above the law, and they believe that it's okay to hide evidence like this. It's okay not to be on the up and up with survivors, the people who are paying their salary via taxes. To them, it's all about what they want. It's all about making sure whatever mid-level bureaucrat was in charge or high-level bureaucrat was in charge doesn't come out smelling like ass. Well, newsflash, you all smell like ass, so you might as well just be upfront and transparent, because then, well, we would know who the scumbags are. Since you want to be secretive and you want to hide everything, I'm of the mind at this point that every boss inside of the Department of Justice, everyone who is, mid-level and above, is garbage, because if they weren't, they'd be coming up and stepping up to the plate and blowing the whistle and making sure shit like this doesn't occur and making sure that there was accountability amongst their peers. But we haven't seen much of that, have we? We've seen a lot of hiding of evidence from the survivors. We've seen a lot of hiding of the evidence from the citizens who pay for those investigations to occur. And what we have seen also is not much truth from those in charge of this investigation. So today our article is from abcnews.go.com. Headline: Lawyers for Epstein survivor seek previously concealed information from the Just Us Department. This article was authored by James Hill. And while I think ABC as an outlet is garbage, I think James Hill has actually done really good work. He's been very informative. He's been very thorough with his work, and he has done a pretty damn good job, even though ABC is, straight trash like the legacy media, unfortunately, like the rest of them. Attorneys for an alleged survivor of deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein contend in a new court filing that the U.S. Department of Just Us failed to turn over significant documents related to Epstein's controversial 2007 deal with federal prosecutors and concealed the existence of a nearly year-long data gap in the email inbox of Alexander Acosta, the former U.S. attorney in Miami who approved the deal. So again, it's just like I was talking about in my opening there. The Department of Justice is they like to play coy, right? They think they're slick. They want to make sure that they're only releasing the very basic, most necessary documents, like they're negotiating world peace with our enemies or something. Newsflash, all right? We need to know that our Justice Department, or Just Us Department, is working the right way. We need to know that it's not dysfunctional. You're not in charge of making sure national secrets are protected, okay? Your job is to be in charge of meting out justice equally under the law to everybody. Not for the rest of this nonsense you idiots are involved in on a regular basis over at the Just Us Department. The bureaucracy, the maneuvering, the politicizing, it's all trash. And it has to end. And hopefully, in the wake of this, there's going to be a whole new set of regulations that gets slapped on these people. I think it calls into doubt everything that we've been told about the case from the Just Us Department, said Paul Cassell, an attorney for alleged survivor Courtney Wild, who sued the DOJ in 2008 over Epstein's once-secret deal. We've been told that they have all the information, that everything was fine, but now it turns out they've never had all the information. And I'd be pissed too if I was the lawyers, right? Why are you lying to these guys? Why, if you were the government, wouldn't you want to know if these girls' rights were violated in such a disgusting manner? Wouldn't you want to be aware that employees within the government were involved in that, were perhaps giving out sweetheart deals to scumbags like Epstein and his band of merry, disgusting perverts? Wouldn't that be something that you'd be interested in if you were in charge of the Just Us Department? Wouldn't you want to bring the hammer swinging down like Thor on whoever was giving the department such a bad look, such a discolored eye? But no, they don't care because they're all in on it. This shit came from on high. This came from, the bosses, right? This wasn't just Alexander Acosta. This wasn't him making this move on his own. This was all the way up from Mukasey, all the way down, and it spanned multiple administrations. The new court filing comes in advance of a crucial court hearing in Wild's case, and on the heels of the release last week of a 350-page report on the Epstein deal by the Just Us Department's Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, which spent more than a year reviewing the actions of Acosta and the 4 former prosecutors most directly involved in the negotiations. Oh yeah, they reviewed it all right. An internal review. They were given the documents that the people involved wanted them to see, right? Do you really think these people just turned over everything in full transparency? Of course they didn't. That's why the emails were, quote-unquote, missing. Yeah, okay, sure, that just happened to happen, and we're just finding out about that after an investigation has been initiated. How does that sit well with anybody? That's not even like good afternoon movie detective TV type shit. It's ridiculous, actually. The review, which determined that Acosta exhibited poor judgment in his handling of the Epstein deal, relied substantially on internal government emails as well as communications between the prosecutors and Epstein's team of high-profile lawyers to reach its conclusion. So again, right there it tells you. It relied on internal government emails as well as communications between the prosecutors. None of these people were sat down and put under oath, I bet. Why not? Why is it good for us but not good for them? Why can they ambush you at any time and get you down on a 302? But these people? Nah, we're just going to go, we'll just check your emails, all right? And if a whole year's worth are missing, we'll just chalk it up to a glitch. I wonder if they were investigating you or me, if it would be chalked up to a glitch or if we'd be held responsible. But the details concerning the missing Acosta emails were relegated to a brief section of an appendix to the report. The gap, which did not affect Acosta's sent mail, was determined by OPR to be most likely due to a technological error, and OPR reviewers found no evidence that there had been any intentional deletion of emails, according to the report. So it did not affect his sent emails, right? So maybe Acosta was sending the emails on a different handle? Could that be possible? A private email, a private server? Pretty possible, isn't it? It's ludicrous to think just because this quote-unquote investigation turned this up that we should have any faith in the Department of Just Us, to be honest. They know that this whole entire thing is FUBAR. They know this whole entire situation is straight trash and that they are in the wrong. But yet the government digs in their heels and wastes taxpayer dollars, your dollars, to make sure that they cover the asses of these disgusting bastards who were masquerading as prosecutors. The email gap coincides with a critical period from May 2007 when the lead prosecutors prepared a 53-page draft indictment of Epstein. Now, mind you, okay, this was when the whole shebang was being put into motion. The draft was being prepared. All the talk was about the indictment, etc., okay? This is when everything was kicked into motion. So now you mean to tell me, you want me to believe that right in this exact time frame, there was a technical glitch and all those emails just went missing, floated into the wind. Boy, I sure wish there would be a glitch at the IRS and all of our tax documents would just disappear. Wouldn't that be nice? But we know that here, back in reality, where the rest of us exist, that's not going to occur. Just like, in my opinion, these emails did not just disappear. It was during this time frame that Epstein's defense attorneys were mounting an aggressive lobbying effort to persuade Acosta and his deputies to shelve the indictment and close the federal case. Again, they might have been lobbying them on the ground, but we all know if you really want to get something done anywhere, you go above the head of middle management, right? You go directly to director or above. And that's what happened here. This was kicked up top. Mukasey and the rest of the war criminals who were appointed by scumbag George Bush were just so happy to provide this great deal to Jeffrey Epstein. Somebody that they've known in their circles since, at the very least, the 90s when he was coming to visit Bill Clinton at the White House. What, these career swamp critters, these bureaucrats who have been in these positions for the 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, had no idea who Epstein was? And if that's the case, then they're shitty at their job and they should be fired. The gap seems to have surgically struck on exactly the time period when most of the big decisions were being made, Cassell said. I was stunned, because you would think if there was ever a case where the Just Us department would have been very careful to make sure they had complete records and things weren't missing, this would be the one. And he's right. With all of the interest around this case, with all of the many layers to this case, with all of the intrigue, the salaciousness, the people that it involves, you would think that the Just Us department would be on their shit. You know what? I'm at the point where I think this is willful negligence at this point. Not just negligent, not just the perfect storm of mishaps like Darth Barr would have us believe. I think this is willful negligence, if anything. And it makes you wonder just exactly what are these scumbags trying to hide? And it also points to us being on the right path, in my opinion, folks. We've been calling this shit out from the jump, that this was not right. Things were not kosher. And I've said it once, I'll say it a million more times. Ghislaine Maxwell and everybody involved deserve at the very least the same penalties as Keith Raniere. This needs to be a RICO case yesterday. After the OPR report was made public, Cassell said that he and his co-counsel Brad Edwards began digging through their case files and discovered that some emails between the prosecutors and Epstein's lawyers that were cited in the report had apparently not been produced to them in Wild's case, even though a court ordered the government to turn over all of those communications to them in 2013. Now, pause. Refresh my memory. Who was the president in 2013? Who was the vice president in 2013? And the Just Us Department was still conducting itself in the same manner. This is what I mean when I say be very wary, be very cautious of jubilation just because Trump is gone. Now, is it nice to have a piece off the board? Of course it is. But don't think for one single smidgen of a second that these scumbag bureaucrats that are in the Department of Justice that are surrounding Vice President-elect Biden are any better than the scumbags that came before them. They're all retreads, folks. I told you to look at his cabinet. People that have been around Washington, D.C. forever. So, remember, this spans multiple presidencies with both R's and D's next to their names. We got to get out of that mindset. No white knighting anybody in this case. No my team or their team in this case. There is only justice to be had in this case. And the rest of the people who get in the way of that are right on the same page as these enablers in one way or the other. Because if you're running interference for these people to be brought to justice because some of them might be your faves, well, you're part of the problem. And I have zero faith after looking at some of the transition team members that are coming in and knowing what I know, obviously, about what occurred while he was vice president. I am not confident in the least that things are going to get kicked into high gear or Prince Andrew's going to be forced into talking. I would love for that to be the case, and I hope that happens, but maybe I'm just too cynical at this point. Maybe my cynicism has reached such a level where I am just completely in a show me phase. But unfortunately, my track record of being correct in matters such as this is pretty damn good. In just a few minutes' time, I identified several external emails that appear to have been available to OPR, but inexplicably never made available to Miss Wild, Edwards wrote in an affidavit submitted to the court on Monday. It's just unbelievable. It is unbelievable that this took place. And I think that what it does, it also shines a spotlight on the OPR and the Inspector General's office. You remember, they can't even charge anybody with a crime or indict anybody with a crime. They can only write up suggestions for the Department of Justice. Among the records Edwards contends the government may have improperly withheld were messages between a federal prosecutor and an Epstein attorney who was contesting a requirement that Epstein register as a sex offender, and exchanges about a government subpoena seeking to obtain computers that had been removed from Epstein's Palm Beach home prior to the execution of a search warrant by local police. Epstein's lawyers contested the subpoena, and it was eventually withdrawn as a condition of Epstein's deal. So they never even got a look at those computers that were removed before the warrant was enacted, before the raid, before any of that. It's such a joke to even think about how much evidence was probably destroyed or stashed or who knows what happened to it. But they could have had all of it. They could have had it all if they would have just done their jobs. If they would have just actually really said to hell with all the nonsense. I don't care about political ramifications. This dude's sick. We're bringing him to justice. F you, Dershowitz. But no, none of them had the backbone. Not Acosta, not Sloman, not Menschel, not Villafana, not Mukasey. None of them. And that is a stain on the Department of Justice that keeps growing larger and darker every single time they try to keep something hidden. So far, we can determine in our records this correspondence has not been produced to us. This correspondence is significant because had the efforts to obtain the computer continued, it is likely that the prosecutors would have obtained ironclad forensic evidence to charge Epstein with child pornography crimes, Edwards wrote. And that's why the lawyers for Epstein fought so hard about that subpoena and why it was added to as part of the plea deal. I mean, the more you dig into the plea deal and the more you dig into the shit that went around it, I've never seen anything like it. I usually have a couple of things to say about a couple of things, but I find myself tongue-tied in almost anger when I talk about this plea deal. It is so unbelievable that this could occur and that this sort of deal could be administered to somebody like Jeffrey effing Epstein. Epstein's deal with the federal government allowed him to avoid an indictment that could have charged him with substantial crimes against 19 alleged victims. He faced a potential sentence between 14 and 17 years if convicted, according to the OPR report. Right there, that alone is enough to make me want to gag anyway. 17 measly-ass years? Keith Raniere got 120, $120 old boy's doing. Jeffrey Epstein should have got triple that, quadruple that, life sentence, buried under the jail, and chemically castrated to boot. So even the sentence he was looking at was garbage. And that's why I think this time around, it's going to be a different story. I think that once the RICO charges start to drop on these cats, it's going to be panic mode for them. And if the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals does the right thing and gets rid of that non-prosecution agreement, it's going to be like shooting fish in a barrel, folks. Instead, he pleaded guilty to 2 prostitution-related crimes in state court and served 13 months of an 18-month jail sentence, much of it on a liberal work release program, and the federal case was closed. Isn't that nice, huh? Isn't that really fantastic that occurred? You know, I wish that Jeffrey Epstein would have had to face all of the disgusting sadness of being in prison, of the dehumanization of the whole process. I really wish he would have had to face that. It's bullshit that he got the easy way out. I don't care if you want to say he was killed or if he killed himself. Either way, it was the easy way out for him. Straight garbage for the survivors. And it is a huge blight on the Department of Justice and the federal government itself. Wild's lawsuit against the DOJ alleges that Epstein's non-prosecution agreement, which also conferred immunity on any potential co-conspirators, was reached in violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act, which requires the federal government to confer with victims, keep them informed, and to treat them with fairness and dignity. None of that occurred. And I think we'll see the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals take that into account, especially after they receive the amicus briefs from the lawmakers who actually wrote these laws. After many years of litigation, the Justice Department acknowledged that it did not inform Wild or any of the survivors about the deal before it was done. But the government argues that the law did not require the survivors to be notified because no federal charges were filed. Again, a technicality. That's what they're going to try and keep the non-prosecution agreement sealed on, a technicality. It is, it's something you would see in like a banana republic, right? In like a dictatorship. This isn't how democracy is supposed to work. These kind of technicalities aren't supposed to keep these scumballs out of jail, but yet here we are, every single conversation, and it's the same story. In February 2019, a federal judge in West Palm Beach ruled in Wild's favor, deciding that the government had violated the law by not conferring with Wild and other alleged survivors before they made the deal. But before the judge could determine if Epstein's deal should be torn up, Epstein was arrested again in New York and then died in prison. The case was dismissed, but she has appealed the decision. And this is what I've been talking about so much lately, and what I think is the most important part out of all of this. Early next month, Wild's case is scheduled for oral arguments before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Her lawyers are now urging the court to consider the newly discovered information about Acosta's missing emails and to order the government to turn over the allegedly undisclosed records and all the materials the OPR considered for its report. Unfortunately, the appeals court judges don't have in front of them right now all of the information about the case. A lot of new information came out last week when the Justice Department finally released its internal emails and other information. And we want all of that information in front of the judges when they make a ruling, Cassell said. According to Cassell's filing, the government has indicated that it opposes his request. I mean, can you imagine? So the government opposes his request to have all that information available to the judges. As if the government, meaning the Department of Justice and Darth Barr, should be the arbiters of what is right and what is wrong. I am sorry, but that is not how this country works. These people need to be held responsible by the courts. They couldn't handle it themselves. Their internal investigation was garbage. Now it is up to the courts to bust their wigs in. And folks, I have to tell you that once the judges get this information in front of them, and I have no doubt that they're going to see this stuff, I am sure that their clerks are seeing this information as we speak, and they're compiling it, and they're going to bring it before the justices. And once they get all of this information, and they see just how piss poor of a job this was, and literally a job when I say they got jobbed, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals is, in my opinion, going to really let loose here and let loose the Kraken. Because once this non-prosecution agreement gets tossed, then, folks, it's on. Because this is the one thing holding back an absolute avalanche of indictments. Following the release of the OPR review, an attorney for Acosta, Gordon Todd, released a statement contending that the report fully debunks allegations that Acosta improperly cut Epstein a sweetheart deal or purposefully avoided investigating potential wrongdoings by various prominent individuals. OPR's investigation confirmed the evidentiary and legal challenges that would have faced any attempted federal prosecution of Epstein based on information available at the time. Well, you know what? Maybe you guys should have raided, Zorro Ranch. Maybe you guys should have got those computers. Maybe you guys should have, done your jobs and actually investigated before just looking at Dershowitz and Starr and Lefkowitz and shrugging your shoulders and saying, oh yeah, we're overmatched here. We're just going to pack it in. But now, all of a sudden, that the information wants to, now that the lawyers want this information to go in front of the judges, now the government wants to dig in and now they want to have a legal fight? Well, if they want to have a legal fight, I hope that Mr. Cassell and Mr. Edwards gives them one. And I hope that they pursue this all the way to the halls of the Supreme Court if necessary. That non-prosecution agreement must be completely and utterly destroyed. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI @protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links for this episode can be found in the description box. And to all of you who have donated to the podcast, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll be back tomorrow morning, and we will see what in the hell is going on in the world of the Jeffrey Epstein case then. All right, all of you, have a great night.